The highway stretched endlessly into the night, a thin ribbon of asphalt cutting through the Nevada desert. Ethan Rivers drove alone, the hum of his tires on the road the only sound, apart from the occasional gust of wind rattling his old sedan. The dashboard clock glowed 2:17 a.m., red digits reflecting faintly on his face. He had been driving for hours, chasing a blurred destination, seeking escape from something he couldn't name. The desert lay quiet, almost unnatural in its stillness. He passed a faded sign, "Welcome to Coldwater, Nevada." The town itself looked abandoned, a cluster of dimly lit motels, a gas station with a flickering neon pump. Something about the silence made his chest tighten. The road had been empty for miles, and yet the distant glow of a motel sign drew him like a moth to a flame. Coldwater Inn, vacancy. He slowed, gripping the steering wheel tighter. The air conditioner whined faintly. It was hot outside, but inside the car, a chill ran down his spine, like a whisper from the desert itself. Ethan pulled into the gravel parking lot. The motel looked as if it hadn't changed since the 1970s. Peeling paint, a faded sign swinging with the wind. One flickering lamp barely lit the parking area, casting long shadows. A single car, a rusty pickup, sat parked near the far end. No other lights, no movement. The doors of his sedan shut with a hollow thunk. He adjusted the rearview mirror and glanced at his own face, pale in the neon glow, dark circles under his eyes. Sleep-deprived, restless, chasing memories he wasn't ready to confront. The desert had a way of dredging up thoughts best left buried. He stepped out and felt the night hit him in waves. The air was dry, heavy with sand and the faint smell of fuel. Something about the motel was off. Not overtly sinister, just wrong. Yet he found himself walking toward the office, keys in hand, hoping for human interaction, a brief reprieve from the oppressive silence. Inside, the reception was dimly lit. A small desk cluttered with receipts, an old cash register, and a rotary phone. Behind it sat a woman, maybe in her late 50s, with thinning gray hair pulled into a tight bun. She looked up as he entered. Her eyes were sharp, dark, like coal that had absorbed decades of secrets. "Evening," Ethan said, voice low. "Do you have a room?" "Room 313, she replied, her voice hoarse. No smile, just a nod toward the corridor. $45 cash or card. Ethan handed over a crumpled bill. She counted it slowly, methodically, and slid a small brass key across the desk. Room 313. The number alone seemed to resonate in the air, like it had weight, history. He took the key, nodded, and walked toward the long corridor that smelled faintly of must and old carpet. The fluorescent lights above flickered intermittently, casting the hallway in patches of shadow. The walls were beige, chipped in corners, wallpaper peeling like curling skin. Each step echoed softly, almost too loudly in the silence. Somewhere deep in the motel, he heard the faint click of a door closing. He froze. Nobody else was supposed to be here. Room 313's door creaked as he inserted the key. The lock resisted briefly, then gave way with a metallic sigh. Inside, the air was heavy. The room smelled of old smoke and a faint cloying perfume that made his stomach churn. Minimal furniture. A bed with a floral comforter. A small nightstand with a lamp. A desk with a chair, and a TV mounted on the wall. The blinds were closed. The room was dark, almost entirely, save for the dim yellow light of the hallway filtering through the crack under the door. He set his bag down, glanced around. Something was off. The bedspread was perfectly smooth, the pillow plumped unnaturally. Like someone had just left. He shook his head. Tired, overthinking. Maybe this place just had that motel smell, that stale hotel room smell. He sank onto the bed. The mattress sagged slightly, old springs creaking under his weight. A soft hum of static came from the TV. He reached out and turned it on. A local channel flickered in black and white, static lines. A faint image of a man in a dark room, his face blurred. The sound of muffled whispers accompanied the image. He frowned, leaning closer. The man in the frame seemed to raise a hand toward the camera. Then the static took over, leaving only buzzing lines. Ethan blinked, tried to shake it off. Maybe the TV was old. Maybe he was imagining it. Hours passed. Ethan tried to sleep, but the bed was too stiff, the room too quiet. Then he heard it, a soft scraping, like nails along wood, coming from the corner near the window. He froze. The lamp flickered. His pulse jumped. "Hello?" he called softly. Silence. He reached for his phone. No signal. The desert, the motel, isolation. He felt the walls closing in. Another sound, a faint whisper, almost unintelligible. He thought he heard his name. "Ethan! Ethan!" The lights flickered again. Shadows pooled in the corners, moving in ways that defied logic. The whispering grew louder, more urgent, until it seemed to fill the entire room. Ethan covered his ears, sitting up on the bed. Heart hammering. Then, abruptly, it stopped. Silence. The kind of silence that presses against your skull. He got up, walking toward the small dresser with the mirror. His reflection stared back, pale, tired, and yet wrong. Something was behind him, just a blur, a shadow that didn't belong. He spun around. Nothing. The room was empty. Only the TV static hummed faintly. "I'm losing it," he muttered. The mirror caught his eye again. For the briefest second, he saw a figure sitting on the bed behind him, pale, hunched, long hair falling over its face. He blinked. It was gone. His breath came fast. The desert night pressed against the walls of the motel room like a living thing, watching. Sleep was impossible. Ethan dressed and stepped into the corridor barefoot, moving toward the office. He wanted answers. The hallway stretched endlessly. The lights flickered overhead, casting grotesque shadows on the peeling walls. Room after room, doors shut tight. But from 312, he heard a soft scratching, faint whispering. He approached cautiously. A hand rested on the doorknob, cold, not his own. He jerked back. No one. The motel was alive, it seemed, with echoes of things that shouldn't exist. Whispers, shadows, the faint metallic smell of something old and rotting. Ethan's pulse pounded, yet he felt compelled to understand. Back in his room, he found something new, a piece of folded paper on the nightstand. He hadn't seen it before. Trembling, he unfolded it. "You shouldn't be here. They are waiting." No signature, no explanation. Just the words, scrawled in uneven, shaky handwriting. Ethan's stomach turned. He wanted to leave, but the desert road behind him stretched endlessly into darkness. Leaving now wasn't an option. Something was tethering him to this room, to room 313. The whispering began again, faint at first, then louder. His name over and over. "Ethan! Ethan!" He sank to the floor, pressed his hands against his ears. The walls pulsed. The air thickened, and then a soft voice right in his ear said, "Welcome home." Ethan woke to the dim light of dawn filtering through the blinds. His eyes stung and every muscle ached from a night of trembling and half-sleep. The desert outside was quiet, but not peaceful. An eerie haze had settled over the motel lot, coating everything in a gray pallor. The note from last night sat on the nightstand, undisturbed. But he noticed something new. The words, "they are waiting," seemed heavier, etched deeper into the paper as though pressed by unseen fingers. He rubbed his eyes and rose from the bed. Each step to the dresser felt heavier than the last, like gravity had doubled. The air smelled of burnt wood and something sweet, almost like rotting flowers. A faint humming resonated from the walls. "This place, it's alive," he muttered, his voice hollow. Drawn by a need he couldn't explain, Ethan made his way to the motel lobby. The fluorescent light flickered weakly. The woman at the desk was gone. Only the chair remained, facing the wall, empty, silent. On the counter lay a thin, dusty ledger. The pages crackled as he opened it. Room 313's entries spanned decades. Travelers checking in, then never checking out. Names scratched in haste, dates crossed out. Marginal notes in shaky handwriting. Too late. Don't open the door. They came again. Took him. She waits still. Ethan felt the ledger burn his hands. Each name seemed to echo in his mind, a chorus of whispers murmuring from the pages. A sudden noise and a soft thump upstairs made him freeze. Room 313 was above him. Something was moving, something human, and not. Back in his room, Ethan tried to rationalize. Maybe he was sleep-deprived, hallucinating. Yet, the TV flickered on by itself, showing static at first, then a faint image. A young woman sitting on the bed, her eyes hollow, hair disheveled. She looked directly at him. "Leave. Before it's too late," she whispered. He blinked. She was gone. Only the static remained. The air grew colder. A soft scratching sound came from the closet. Ethan approached, heart pounding, and slowly opened the door. Nothing but shadows. But the shadows shifted. Formed shapes. Hunched figures, outlines of people who had stayed here before. They didn't move, but their presence was palpable. Heavy, oppressive. Ethan stumbled back, pressed against the wall. What are you?" he stammered. A whisper, collective yet distinct, filled the room. "We are the forgotten. The trapped. The lost." Determined to understand, Ethan searched the office. Old newspapers, yellowed and brittle, revealed the motel's grim history. 1967, a fire on the second floor kills 2 guests. Cause unknown. A traveling salesman disappears in room 313. Only his suitcases left. 1982, reports of strange shadows, whispers in the night. Staff quit overnight. 1999, another disappearance, this time a young couple. Their screams were never reported. The pattern was clear. Room 313 was cursed. Its energy drew travelers in, trapped them, and then fed on their fear until they were lost. Or became part of it. Ethan's pulse raced. He remembered the whispers, the shadows, the note. He wasn't hallucinating. He was caught in history repeating itself. As night fell, the room changed. Shadows pooled into corners, thick and heavy. They began to move, crawling along the walls, shifting subtly, always in peripheral vision. Every object in the room seemed slightly out of place, as if touched by unseen hands. The whispering escalated, overlapping voices, some angry, some sorrowful. "Ethan, join us. Stay. Forever." The bed trembled. The dresser groaned. The mirror fogged, writing appearing in condensation. "Do not leave. Do not sleep." Panic clawed at him. He tried the door, locked. Room 313 refused to release him. "Why me?" he screamed. The air thickened. A cold hand brushed his shoulder. He spun. No one. Yet he felt presence. Watching. Waiting. Hours bled into each other. Ethan's mind strained against exhaustion and fear. Shadows whispered secrets of previous victims. Faces appeared in mirrors and TV screens, pleading, screaming, laughing. "You can't save yourself. You can't save them." Sleep was impossible. Hunger and thirst were forgotten. He realized the motel was not only alive, it was aware. It knew him. It knew his fears. A faint smell of smoke, then flowers, then decay, all in one breath. He staggered, clutching the bedpost. "I need to leave," he whispered, but leaving wasn't possible. Every exit seemed farther away. Every hallway twisted, leading him back to room 313. A shadow lunged from the corner, barely visible, brushing against him. He stumbled back, tripping over the carpet. The whispers became voices. "Ethan. Stay. Forever." The mirror cracked spontaneously, a single fissure racing across the glass. In the reflection, more faces appeared. Some pleading, some screaming, some empty-eyed. Ethan's mind raced. Was it supernatural? Or had the desert, exhaustion, and isolation finally broken him? He couldn't tell anymore. "I have to survive," he muttered. A figure coalesced in the corner, tall, thin, face obscured. It pointed toward the bed. Ethan froze. The bedspread shifted. Something moved beneath it. He realized in chilling clarity, room 313 didn't just trap travelers. It collected them. Ethan backed into the wall, heart hammering. He needed a plan, something to break the motel's hold. He couldn't fight what he couldn't see, but maybe he could outlast it. The shadows receded slightly, whispering still. The voices promised release if he obeyed, stay if he resisted. "I won't give you control," Ethan said, voice trembling but firm. He sank to the floor, pressing his back to the wall, eyes wide. The air still pulsed with whispers. Outside, the desert wind howled. Inside room 313, history pressed down on him, relentless, suffocating, and patient. He didn't know how long he could endure. He only knew he had to try. The desert night fell like a shroud over cold water. Ethan sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the cracked mirror, every nerve taut. The room seemed to breathe around him, air thick, cold, pulsing. The whispers were back, louder now, forming discernible words. "You can't leave. You can't leave. You belong here." He gritted his teeth, refusing to respond. He had to understand. He had to face it. The TV flickered to life again, static at first, then a clear image. A hallway stretching endlessly, lined with doors. All the doors opened simultaneously. Shadows poured out, faceless and fluid, filling the corridor. Ethan's reflection in the cracked mirror mimicked the scene, only distorted, twisted. A low, guttural voice echoed through the walls. The last one. The last one to face us? Ethan drew a deep breath. His pulse thundered in his ears. He realized the only way to survive was to confront the motel's dark heart, room 313 itself. He stepped into the hallway. The fluorescent lights flickered violently, casting grotesque shadows. Every step echoed unnaturally. Doors along the corridor shifted subtly, warping their angles. He approached the stairwell leading to the floor above. The faint sound of whispers and movement grew, swelling into an overwhelming cacophony. A shadow lunged from the wall. Ethan froze. It solidified into a figure, a woman, pale, hair tangled, eyes hollow. "Join us," it whispered. "No," Ethan said, his voice firmer than he felt. "I'm leaving." The figure's face twisted in anguish and rage, then dissolved into mist. Others appeared. Men, women, children, all victims of room 313. Their faces pleaded silently, accusingly. He understood. The motel fed on fear, despair, and isolation. It wasn't just a room. It was a trap, a collector of lost souls. Ethan's mind raced. Why him? Why now? Then he remembered the ledger, the newspaper clippings, the whispering voices. Room 313 wasn't random. It attracted those who carried guilt, regret, unresolved fear. He realized his own isolation. His past mistakes had drawn him here. A sudden noise, like metal scraping, echoed from the bed. The comforter twitched. Something moved beneath it. Ethan's stomach dropped. "Show yourself!" he demanded, voice shaking. The bedspread lifted, revealing nothing. Just shadows lingering, coiling like smoke. A chill ran down his spine as the whispers shifted, now almost mocking. "You cannot leave. You cannot leave. You belong." Ethan sank to his knees, pressing against the wall. His hands shook, sweat dripping into his eyes. For a moment, surrender felt tempting. Let the motel take him, end the terror. But then, a spark of defiance, his only anchor, reminded him that giving in would erase him, body and soul. Determined, Ethan approached the bed again. He tore the comforter back forcefully. Shadows exploded outward, swirling around him, forming grotesque humanoid shapes. Faces of past victims emerged, some screaming silently, others just staring. The air was thick, almost tangible, cold pressing against his skin like water. He yelled, trying to assert himself. "I'm not afraid of you." The shadows recoiled slightly. The whispers faltered. Then the tallest shadow, a hulking figure with a featureless face, advanced. Ethan's hand shook, but he grabbed a chair from the corner, holding it like a shield. "I won't be part of your collection," he shouted. The room twisted, walls bending, ceiling stretching impossibly. Time itself seemed distorted. He stumbled, falling back, but his eyes remained locked on the main shadow. Something in its movement reminded him of the ledger's scrawled words. Too late. Don't open the door. It wasn't too late. Not yet. He could fight. He had to fight. A voice, older, deeper, more commanding, cut through the chaos. "Ethan Rivers, you are not ready. You cannot leave." The shadows froze. The room pulsed with malevolent energy. The mirror cracked further, creating multiple reflections of him, each more distorted, each more terrified. One reflection moved independently, smiling cruelly. Ethan's chest burned. He realized the motel wasn't just alive. It was aware. It knew his every fear, his every weakness, and it weaponized them. He screamed, lunging at the mirror, shattering the largest pane with his fists. Glass sprayed across the floor. The shadows recoiled. For a fleeting moment, he had power. "Leave! Leave me alone!" The motel trembled, lights flickering, walls groaning. Shadows hissed, twisting like smoke caught in a storm. Ethan ran toward the door, but the hallway seemed endless, looping back on itself. Every exit led back to room 313. He grabbed the brass key, trying to unlock the door, but the key melted in his hand, twisted, blackened, whispers intensified, overlapping, voices of victims past, voices of the motel itself. "You cannot escape. You belong. Join us." He sank to the floor, exhaustion, fear, and despair crushing him. He could hear his own heartbeat echoing. In that moment, clarity struck. He could not fight the motel physically, only psychologically. He closed his eyes, breathed deeply, focusing on his memories, his life, his reasons for surviving. The motel reacted violently. Shadows thrashed, walls pulsated, but slowly Ethan felt a sliver of control. His fear no longer entirely owned him. Hours seemed to pass like minutes. Ethan focused on one thought: I will not become them. I will not let this place claim me. The shadows surged, hissing and screaming. Then, almost imperceptibly, the room began to calm. The whispers softened. The mirror, cracked and jagged, reflected him alone, exhausted but alive. Ethan collapsed against the wall, sweat dripping, lungs burning. Room 313 had not released him completely. It never would. But he had survived the first night of true confrontation. He understood one horrifying truth. The motel would wait for the next traveler, the next lost soul, and he would carry the memory of those it consumed forever. The first rays of sunlight crept through the blinds. Ethan sat on the floor, staring blankly. The motel was quiet again. Too quiet. He knew he had escaped, but only barely. Room 313 was patient. It remembered. It waited. He stood, took the key in his hand, and left the room. The hallway stretched endlessly, but somehow the exit came into view. Outside, the Nevada desert awaited. Cold, silent, indifferent. Ethan drove away without looking back. He would tell no one. He would never speak of room 313 again. But deep inside, he carried its whispers, its shadows, its cursed history. The motel would wait. And someday it would call again. Jessica Moore stared out the taxi window as the skyline of Chicago rose into the night sky. Glass towers reflected the orange glow of streetlights, while the L train screeched along elevated tracks nearby. She felt a mixture of excitement and unease. Her new apartment building stood quietly at the end of a narrow street, a red brick structure with peeling paint on the fire escape and the faint smell of damp cement wafting from the entrance. Her suitcase rolled beside her as she unlocked the door to apartment 4B. The building was older, but the interior felt lived in. The wooden floors creaked beneath her weight, and the faint sound of dripping water echoed from somewhere deep within the walls. "First night in the city alone," she murmured to herself. She set her bag down and walked to the window. From here, she could see the glowing streets below, neon signs reflecting in puddles from a recent rain. A distant siren wailed. All seemed normal. But as she turned toward the hallway, she noticed the floor above, apartment 5B. Lights flickered intermittently, as if someone had moved between rooms. Jessica unpacked slowly, trying to shake the tension in her shoulders. Boxes were stacked neatly against the wall. The apartment smelled faintly of must and old carpeting. She unpacked her clothes, set her laptop on the small desk, and settled onto the couch, scrolling through her phone. Then she heard it, a soft thump like footsteps from above. Apartment 5B, she froze. Footsteps shouldn't move this late. She leaned back, listening. Thump, thump, pause, thump. "Maybe someone's moving furniture?" she whispered. Another pause. Then a low creak like a floorboard bending. Something about it felt deliberate, not casual. Her pulse quickened. Over the next hour, the sounds continued. Footsteps pacing, soft murmurs she couldn't understand, a faint scratching. Jessica tried calling the building manager. No answer. She texted a friend to stay on the line while she unpacked. "You're imagining it," her friend said over the phone. Old buildings make noises. She wanted to believe it. But then came the whisper. A clear voice, soft, just outside her bedroom door. Jessica. Her hand froze on her phone. She pressed herself against the wall, heart hammering. The voice repeated just once, "Jessica." No one was there. The apartment was empty. The footsteps paused. Silence. Despite her fear, curiosity pushed her to investigate. Jessica grabbed a flashlight from her emergency kit and approached the hallway. Every creak of the floor echoed unnaturally. She reached her front door and opened it slightly, peering toward the ceiling. Apartment 5B. No one was visible, no lights. Yet she felt watched. Her stomach churned as she noticed the faint outline of a figure moving behind the blinds above. She blinked. Gone. Only the faint reflection of her own flashlight glared back. She stepped back into her apartment, locking the door. Her hands shook. "It's nothing. Just a building," she said aloud, but she didn't believe herself. Hours later, as Jessica tried to sleep, the sounds resumed. Not just footsteps this time. Rhythmic tapping on her ceiling, almost like someone pacing with intent. A shadow flickered beneath her door. She froze, straining to hear. Then came a faint whisper, unmistakably close. "Don't ignore me." Her eyes darted to the bedroom door. No one. She grabbed her blanket, pressed it over her head, and tried to breathe. This is ridiculous. It's just the building. But the whisper returned, louder, more insistent. "I'm up here. Jessica." Her phone vibrated on the nightstand. A text from an unknown number. "I see you." Panic seized her. She grabbed her keys, ready to leave, but as she approached the door, the footsteps above stopped. Dead silence, the kind that presses on your chest. Jessica couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. She researched the building online and in old archives. Apartment 5B had been vacant for over 20 years. The previous tenant, a man named Thomas Keller, had vanished without a trace. Rumors claimed the place was cursed, that anyone moving in below him would hear him pacing, whispering, never leaving. Her pulse raced. Could it be? No. She had to be imagining things. And yet the sounds, the whispers, the figure in the blinds, her fear told her otherwise. Night fell again. Jessica sat on her bed trying to distract herself with music, but the shadows on the ceiling began moving. Slow, deliberate, The footsteps returned, not walking, marching. A low, hollow sigh filled the room, chilling her to the bone. "I'm here," the whisper said clearly. Jessica's heart pounded as a shadow detached itself from the ceiling corner, stretching downward unnaturally. She stumbled back against the wall. The figure was there, tall, faceless, and silent, except for the whisper that now surrounded her from every corner of the apartment. Jessica realized she couldn't leave. Not yet. The front door, unlocked, seemed to stretch farther away with every step. The apartment itself felt alive, bending subtly around her. The shadows moved in ways that defied physics, always keeping her in the center of their gaze. She sank to the floor, trembling. Her phone screen glowed, showing the unknown number again. "You belong to me now." Outside, Chicago city lights twinkled, indifferent. Inside, the apartment whispered, waited, and watched. Jessica understood she wasn't alone, and her neighbor upstairs never left. Jessica woke with a start, heart hammering. Her apartment felt colder than the Chicago night outside, though the heater had been on. The bedsheets clung to her skin, damp with sweat. She noticed the faint smell of musty carpet mixed with smoke lingering in the air. The shadows seemed thicker now, stretching subtly along the ceiling and walls. A single elongated shadow leaned across the bedroom doorway, vanishing when she blinked. "It's just my imagination," she whispered, though her voice sounded hollow in the empty apartment. But the floorboards creaked above her. Footsteps. Not casual wandering, but precise, deliberate pacing. The apartment had become a trap, the building itself a predator. Determined to understand, Jessica dug deeper into the apartment's history. She found an old folder tucked in a crack behind the radiator. Inside were letters, faded photographs, and newspaper clippings. Thomas Keller, the previous tenant of 5B, had been a recluse, obsessed with the supernatural. Neighbors reported strange noises, whispering at all hours, shadows appearing in the hallways. He disappeared one night, leaving only a final, frantic note. "They won't let me leave. They are in the walls, waiting." A chill ran down her spine. The parallels with her own experience were impossible to ignore. That night, the apartment became alive. The footsteps above her room didn't stop. They circled, echoed, and grew louder. Objects moved on their own. A chair scraped across the hardwood. Lamps flickered violently. Books slid off shelves. Jessica backed into the corner, clutching her phone. Her friend on the other line heard nothing, dismissing it as old building quirks. But Jessica knew the truth. The presence was intelligent, aware, and focused entirely on her. The shadow from the ceiling corner stretched downward, forming a faint silhouette of a man. Faceless, solid, yet shimmering at the edges. The whispering became a voice, clear, commanding. "You cannot ignore me. You belong upstairs." Jessica's attempts to flee were thwarted. The front door, once only a few steps away, now seemed impossibly distant. Every hallway twisted subtly, leading her back to the center of her apartment. She could hear her own heartbeat, racing, echoing like a drum in a silent cathedral. The shadow moved closer, slowly, deliberately. Her flashlight illuminated its shape, tall, faceless, with hands that extended unnaturally, fingers curling like black smoke tendrils. It paused, observing her, the air around it rippling like water. "I won't let you leave," it whispered. Jessica screamed, stumbling backward into the wall. Her knees hit the hardwood with a hollow thump. She pressed herself to the floor, shivering. Hours passed, or perhaps minutes. Time had lost meaning. The shadow's presence was constant, pressing against her mind. Every reflection, every window, every dark corner seemed to hold its eyes. Her phone vibrated again, an unknown number. "I am here." The whispering intensified, overlapping voices, some angry, some pleading, some mocking. Jessica's sense of reality fractured. She didn't know where she ended and the shadow began. I have to stay awake. I have to see this through, she muttered. Frantically, she examined the apartment walls. Faint scratch marks, symbols etched into plaster, ancient, occult-looking. A small hidden panel behind the kitchen cabinet revealed an old diary. It belonged to Thomas Keller. The entries were erratic. They are in the walls, watching, waiting. I hear footsteps even when I am in my own bed. I can feel them moving through me, and I am powerless. The final page. The neighbor below. She will hear me. She will feel me. She will belong to us. Jessica's stomach dropped. She realized the shadow wasn't random. It was Keller, or what remained of him, bound to the apartment, trapped between life and death, seeking company in the form of a new tenant. The shadow lunged. Jessica felt cold air rush past her, nearly knocking her off her feet. It wasn't entirely solid, but its presence pressed against her mind, filling her with dread. The whisper became screaming in her head. Stay. Join me. Forever. Objects flew around the apartment. Books, lamps, even the fridge door swung open violently. Jessica scrambled, shielding herself. The shadows coalesced into multiple forms surrounding her, almost breathing on her neck. Her only anchor, memory of her own life, friends, the outside world. She focused, mentally forcing herself to separate reality from the apartment's influence. Slowly, the shadows hesitated. Using the distraction, Jessica bolted to the stairs. The shadow chased, a black blur that shifted and extended unnaturally. She sprinted, lungs burning, adrenaline surging. She reached the lobby, empty, silent, untouched. Outside, the cold Chicago night air hit her face. She gasped, shivering, feeling the real world for the first time in hours. She ran down the street, away from the building, away from the unseen eyes above. Behind her, in apartment 5B, the lights flickered once and then went dark. Jessica didn't stop until the building was out of sight. She knew she hadn't escaped fully. The apartment waited, patient, hungry, and one day it would call again. Jessica sat in a coffee shop across the street from her apartment, trembling. Her hands shook as she held her cup, trying to steady her breath. She knew she couldn't stay away forever. Apartment 5B had imprinted itself on her mind. The shadow's whisper had followed her, a faint echo in her skull. You belong upstairs. She knew what she had to do. The only way to stop the torment was to confront the source. To face the entity head-on, night fell. She walked back, the wind whipping against her face, city lights casting distorted reflections on wet pavement. The building loomed ahead, imposing, silent, waiting. The lobby was empty, dust motes floating in the dim light. Jessica's footsteps echoed. The apartment smelled of old carpet, damp plaster, and something metallic. Her heart thumped as she climbed the stairs to 4B. Each step creaked, a chorus of warnings or maybe invitations. Inside, the apartment was exactly as she had left it. But the shadows lingered. They weren't static this time. They pulsed, coiled, waiting. The whispering began almost immediately. I knew you would come back. Jessica gripped the diary she had found in the hidden panel. Thomas Keller's words offered her clues, hints on how to confront the presence. Suddenly, the ceiling shadow shifted, forming a tall, faceless figure with elongated limbs. Keller's essence had coalesced, not fully human, not fully spirit. You cannot leave, it said, its voice a hollow echo. Jessica's pulse raced. She remembered the diary. Keller had tried binding himself to the apartment to escape reality, but the building had trapped him instead. Now it sought another victim, her. She took a deep breath, chanting silently the names of every tenant the apartment had claimed, drawing courage from the spirits trapped within the walls. The shadow lunged. The apartment seemed to respond to their struggle. Walls pulsed, lights flickered, objects flew. Jessica's fear threatened to overwhelm her, but she forced herself to focus. The diary had mentioned confronting the shadow not with anger but with acknowledgement, recognizing its existence and pain. "I see you, Thomas," she shouted. "I see your fear, your loneliness. You don't have to hurt anyone else." The shadow froze. The whispers softened. Other forms, trapped spirits, pressed close as if watching. For a moment, Jessica thought she had misjudged the horror. It wasn't evil. It was despair, twisted by confinement. Jessica continued, her voice stronger, more determined. "You are not alone. I am here. I see you, but I will not be claimed." The shadow convulsed, twisting violently. The walls bent, lights flickered, and the air grew icy. The other trapped spirits rose, their faces anguished, yet hopeful. The apartment screamed, not with malice, but with the force of centuries of fear and sorrow trying to break free. The ceiling cracked. Shadows dispersed. Keller's presence wavered, his faceless form flickering, shrinking. For a brief moment, Jessica could almost see him. A man, terrified, reaching for release. I'm sorry," the shadow whispered, fading. The apartment collapsed into silence. The lights steadied, shadows retreated into corners. Jessica sank to the floor, exhausted, tears streaming. The air felt lighter, though heavy with memory. The diary lay open on the floor. She flipped through it one last time, noting the final entry she hadn't seen before. "Those who acknowledge the pain can release it. Those who flee become part of the building. Do not ignore it," Jessica understood. She had survived not by fighting, but by empathy, by recognition of the trapped souls, by facing the despair. The next morning, Jessica stepped outside. Chicago glowed around her, indifferent. The wind carried the faint smell of damp earth and exhaust. She turned to look at the building one last time. Apartment 5B stood quiet, as if nothing had happened. She knew the building still waited. It always would. But the shadow that haunted her had retreated, and the trapped spirits had been freed, at least for now. She walked away, each step heavy with exhaustion and relief. The city was alive, chaotic, human. She was alive. Later that night, in her new temporary apartment, Jessica tried to sleep. She felt safe, yet a faint whisper brushed her ear. Softer, almost a sigh. "Thank you." She smiled weakly, closing her eyes. The nightmare was over, for now. But deep inside, she knew the building still waited, patient, hungry, a monument to loneliness and despair. And those who ignored its whispers would never leave. The sun hung low over Oregon's Cascade Mountains, its amber glow filtering through the pines as four friends, Marcus, Elena, Liam, and Jenna, stepped out of their SUV at the Whisper Pines trailhead. The forest was dense, older than any of them had imagined, with massive trees looming like silent sentinels. "Looks peaceful," Jenna said, adjusting her backpack. "Yeah, until something tries to eat you," Liam joked, though his laugh was nervous. The group laughed, though tension lingered in the air. The forest was quiet, almost too quiet, save for the faint rustling of leaves and distant bird calls. Marcus led the way, checking the trail map. "We'll hike to the ridge, set up camp, and be back before nightfall," he said. But as they stepped onto the trail, a strange sensation washed over them. The air felt thick, heavier than it should, and the shadows of the trees stretched oddly, bending subtly toward them. Hours into the hike, the group paused by a small creek. Elena knelt to fill her water bottle, humming softly. Suddenly, a faint echo of her humming returned, slightly delayed, slightly off-key. She frowned. "Did you guys hear that?" she asked. The others shook their heads. Liam laughed nervously. "Probably just the creek. Echoes are weird in the mountains." But when Marcus called out, "Let's keep moving," the forest returned his word, but twisted. "Keep moving." Keep moving. The repetition was not exact. The forest distorted the sound, stretching vowels, adding hissing undertones. A shiver ran down their spines. The deeper they went, the more the forest reacted. Every footstep seemed mirrored by faint, echoing steps that didn't match their own rhythm. Whispers joined the echoes, sometimes forming words, sometimes gibberish. "This is creepy," Jenna said, voice trembling. "I don't like this." The group pressed on. Trees towered overhead, blackened trunks twisting unnaturally. Moss-covered roots snaked across the path like grasping fingers. The sun sank lower, shadows elongating, moving subtly against the light. "It's probably just our minds playing tricks," Marcus said, though his voice lacked conviction. By late afternoon, they found a clearing to set up camp. Marcus pitched the tent while Liam gathered firewood. Elena and Jenna explored a nearby grove. "Hey, listen," Elena whispered suddenly. The forest replied. "Hey, listen." Her words returned, distorted, slow, whispery. They froze. A faint rustling came from the dense undergrowth. Something was moving, just beyond sight. "Probably a deer," Liam said, trying to sound calm. But the edge in his voice betrayed him. But the whispers continued, now clearly repeating their own conversations, twisting phrases mocking their fears. "You're scared. Scared. Scared." The air grew colder. Shadows between the trees seemed to shift, coalescing into darker shapes, flickering at the edges of vision. Night descended quickly. The fire they built was small, flickering weakly against the oppressive darkness. The forest's noises changed. Leaves rustling, branches snapping, subtle whispers threading through the sound of the wind. Jenna shivered. "I don't like this forest, it's watching us." Marcus laughed nervously. "Relax, it's just trees. We'll be fine." But the forest answered, not with wind or rustling, but with words. "Relax. We'll be fine." The friends exchanged uneasy glances. The words were their own, twisted, drawn out, menacing. The whispers intensified as the firelight flickered, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch toward them like dark arms. Later, as they settled into the tent, Liam stepped outside to relieve himself. Minutes passed. Then a scream, sharp, echoing, tore through the night. The group ran out, flashlights cutting through the darkness. Liam was gone. Only the sound of footsteps, his own voice echoing strangely, echoed in the trees. "I'm here. I'm here." Panic set in. Elena grabbed Marcus. "We need to get out now." But the forest seemed to shift subtly, the path twisting, disorienting them. Every direction looked the same. The whispers now surrounded them, repeating not only words but thoughts. "You can't leave. You're lost, lost." Hours of wandering in darkness stretched into timelessness. The forest mocked them, repeating phrases they never spoke, twisting memories into threats. Shadows flickered just beyond the reach of their flashlights. Every rustle of leaves sounded like breathing. Jenna whispered, trembling. "I can hear them." Whispering our names. "They know our fears. Focus on the trail," Marcus shouted, trying to rally them. But his own voice was returned, distorted, warped, sinister. They realized the forest wasn't just echoing sound. It was aware, alive, hungry for fear, for panic, for despair. In a clearing, they found a crude carving on a tree trunk. "Do not speak, do not reply, or stay forever." The words seemed to burn into their minds. Panic surged. Every whisper, every echo, every shadow reminded them of the warning. The night closed in completely. The forest became a labyrinth of sound and shadow. Every word they spoke was repeated, twisted, magnified. Every thought was reflected back at them, amplified. And somewhere, in the deepest shadows of Whisper Pines, something was waiting, patient, ancient, and hungry. The night was thick, suffocating, and the forest seemed endless. Marcus, Elena, and Jenna huddled together, flashlights shaking in their hands. Liam was gone. The echo of his scream haunted the trees, distorted and prolonged. "Help! Help!" Jenna's voice trembled as she whispered, "We need to move. We have to get out." But the forest responded, "Move. Stay lost." Every word they spoke twisted into a threat, a warning, a mockery. The shadows between the pines stretched unnaturally, bending toward them, coiling like black smoke. Each step forward felt like walking through water, resistance unseen but palpable. A branch snapped nearby. Marcus swung his flashlight toward it, but no one was there. Then a whisper, right in Jenna's ear. "You first," she screamed. A shadow detached itself from the trees, a humanoid form, but impossibly thin and elongated, moving faster than her eyes could track. It lunged, brushing past her shoulder. She stumbled. Marcus grabbed her, shouting to keep moving. "Don't let it touch you!" But the forest had learned their fear. The ground beneath their feet shifted subtly, roots rising to trip them, leaves hiding unseen holes. Every movement was mirrored by a whispering shadow, always behind, always observing. Hours of fleeing left them exhausted. Every whisper now carried fragments of their memories, fears, regrets, secrets. The forest repeated them. "You should have called for help. You're weak." "Why didn't you save him?" Elena collapsed to the ground, trembling. "It's in our heads. It knows everything." "We can't stop it," Marcus muttered, his voice cracking. "We have to keep moving," but movement became disorienting. The trail twisted back on itself. Every landmark appeared twice, then disappeared. The forest had become a maze, alive and sentient. Desperate, they stumbled upon a dilapidated cabin. The roof sagged, windows broken, walls warped. They slipped inside, hoping for temporary refuge. The floorboards creaked under their weight, but inside, the oppressive presence seemed slightly muted. Jenna whispered, "Do you think it can't reach us here?" "Don't think like that," Elena replied, scanning the room. "It's everywhere. It's the forest." They tried to rest, but the shadows had followed. On the walls, shapes flickered, human-like figures, twisted and distorted. The whispers continued, now chanting their names in a low, rhythmic cadence. Marcus turned toward the corner, flashlight trembling in his hand. A figure appeared. Liam, or at least what resembled him. His face was pale, eyes hollow, mouth moving silently. "Help me!" Elena screamed. The figure dissolved into shadows the moment Marcus lunged. But the image lingered in their minds, a psychological scar. "It's showing us what it wants," Marcus whispered. "It's toying with us." The forest seemed to react to their terror, intensifying the whispers, thickening the shadows, bending the cabin around them subtly, like the walls themselves were alive. Through the night, the whispers never stopped. Shadows crept along walls, over furniture, over floors. Every creak, every rustle, every whisper of wind became a threat. "You'll never leave." "We are all lost." "He's next." Elena felt the forest inside her mind. Her thoughts were no longer private. Every fear, every regret, every unspoken secret became weaponized. Jenna's breathing grew ragged. I can't take this." Marcus tried to focus, forcing himself to remember the trail map, the real world, something tangible. But the forest distorted everything. Time stretched unnaturally. Hours felt like days. Suddenly, the cabin door slammed shut. The shadows converged. A long, thin tendril of darkness shot across the floor, wrapping around Elena's ankle. She screamed, clawing at it, but it pulled her toward the corner. "Elena?" Marcus yelled, grabbing her, but the tendril disappeared, and so did Elena. Only her scream echoed, distorted and slowed, fading into the forest. "No, no!" Jenna screamed. Marcus realized the terrifying truth. The forest didn't kill in the conventional sense. It trapped them, absorbed them, twisted them into echoes and whispers. With dawn approaching, Marcus and Jenna were alone. Exhausted, terrified, Desperate, they understood the forest's rules. Silence, focus, and moving together offered the only chance of survival. "We can't run blindly anymore," Marcus said. "We need to think, stay quiet, and follow the trail carefully." But the forest had already learned from them. Every movement, every whisper, every heartbeat was monitored. Every step forward risked another disappearance. The trees loomed above, ancient and patient. Shadows flitted in the corner of vision. Whispers twisted their own words back at them. "We're not leaving. We belong here." The forest was alive. It was hungry, and it was waiting for the next mistake. The first light of dawn barely penetrated the thick canopy of whisper pines. Marcus and Jenna huddled near the cabin, trembling, exhausted. The forest was still alive around them, pulsating, whispering, every tree a silent observer. "We can't stay here," Marcus whispered. "We have to reach the trail, the road." "Anything." Jenna nodded, eyes wide, scanning the twisted shadows that moved like living things across the forest floor. The whispers were constant, repeating their fears, mocking them, twisting their own voices into threats. "You will not leave. You belong here." The forest wasn't just alive, it was aware. It had learned their fear, their hesitation, and it used it to control every step they took. They moved cautiously, following faint markers that might have been the trail. Every step was deliberate. Every sound they made was echoed back, distorted, threatening. Branches bent toward them, roots snaking across the path. Shadows flickered in peripheral vision, coalescing into grotesque, human-like shapes. Every time they blinked, the shadows shifted, always closer, always observing. "Keep your voices down," Marcus whispered. "Don't give it any words to twist." They advanced in silence, hearts hammering. Every rustle of leaves sounded like footsteps, every snap of a twig like the forest reaching for them. Time was meaningless. Moments stretched like hours, hours like days. Eventually, they reached a clearing. The trees here were impossibly tall, their trunks blackened, twisted, their roots coiling like serpents. In the center, a massive hollow, dark as midnight, seemed to breathe. This is it," Jenna whispered. Marcus understood. The forest's consciousness was here at its heart. It had drawn them to this point, testing, feeding, preparing. The whispers escalated, now in a chorus. "You belong. You cannot leave. Join us." From the shadows, twisted forms began to emerge. Echoes of the lost hikers, including Elena and Liam. Faces pale, eyes hollow, moving silently but deliberately toward them. Marcus stepped forward. "We're not staying," he shouted. His voice cracked, but determination shone. The forest reacted violently. Shadows surged, wrapping around the clearing. The lost hikers reached out, not with hands, but with shadows that pressed against their minds, whispering regrets, fears, failures. Jenna screamed, trying to pull Marcus back, but he held her hand firmly. "Focus, remember who you are. Don't let it twist you."
We won't belong."
Marcus shouted, repeating the phrase aloud as if it were a mantra. The forest recoiled slightly. Shadows hesitated. The whispers faltered, the echoes twisting with confusion. The forest's power was strongest in the mind. Every fear, every doubt, every guilt was amplified. Marcus and Jenna felt their own memories turned against them. Personal failures, lost opportunities, regrets. But they focused. Breathing, anchoring themselves to reality, repeating truths. "We are alive. We are not afraid. We are leaving." The forest shrieked silently, shaking the ground, whipping branches like tentacles. Shadows lunged, but the mantra held. For a moment, the forest hesitated, its ancient patience cracking against human resolve. Suddenly, the clearing began to warp. Trees twisted away, the hollow in the center collapsing into shadow. A narrow path opened, faintly lit by the morning sun. Marcus grabbed Jenna's hand. "This is our chance." They ran, feet pounding on the forest floor. The whispers chased, but grew distant, frustrated. Shadows flickered and dissolved. The forest pulsed once like a heartbeat, then settled into an uneasy calm. Hours later, exhausted, scratched, bleeding, Marcus and Jenna emerged onto a dirt road. The city lights of a distant town glimmered in the morning. Behind them, whisper pines loomed silently, waiting, patient, ancient. Did we make it?" Jenna whispered, voice shaking. "I think so," Marcus said, though he didn't look back. "But it's still there, waiting." They limped toward help, toward humanity, aware that the forest was alive, aware, and would always remember. The lost hikers' echoes were gone. For now. But the forest's heart pulsed in the distance, dark and patient, ready for the next unwary traveler. Even as they reached the town, the whispers haunted them in their minds, faint, almost imperceptible. "We are here. You will return." They survived, barely. But whisper pines had claimed something of their sanity, something of their souls. And deep down they knew the forest would wait, patient, hungry, eternal.